We start with the latest on the coronavirus situation in Japan, where it's been decided that a state of emergency in 9 prefectures will remain in effect for 3 more weeks. People are especially concerned in Okinawa and Hokkaido, where numbers have been surging.
The number of infected people in their 40s and younger is increasing dramatically. And due to the rapid spread of mutant strains, cases are also on the rise among teenagers.
Saturday's tally in Okinawa Prefecture was 335, marking a record high for the second straight day. Tamaki said the prefecture's healthcare system is stretched to the limit. He proposed enhanced PCR testing for visitors and the implementation of a system to easily present COVID negative certificates upon arrival. In the northernmost prefecture of Hokkaido, 442 new cases have been reported. The shortage of beds is particularly serious in the capital Sapporo, where 4 people who tested positive for the virus were found dead in their homes. They were waiting to be hospitalized.
Sometimes it takes more than a week for infected people to get checked by nurses or doctors. Some of them become sicker and die during that time.
Government officials aim to inoculate Japan's 36 million seniors by the end of July, but so far, only 10% of people aged 65 or older have received at least 1 dose. The government is also looking at ways for people other than the elderly to get their shots as soon as possible. One plan the health ministry is considering, possibly as early as mid-June, is to have people vaccinated at their workplaces. It's also planning to extend the scope beyond employees to include their family members. Nationwide, 3,596 daily cases and 91 deaths were reported on Saturday. The health ministry says more than 1,300 people are in critical condition. NHK has learned a Japanese-Chinese joint venture is planning to build a plant in Japan to produce lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. Envision AESC is funded by Nissan Motor and a Chinese energy-related firm. The joint venture is making the final arrangements to build a factory in Ibaraki Prefecture, northeast of Tokyo. The plant's planned annual production capacity is 6 gigawatt-hours. This would make it one of the largest EV battery plants in Japan. Envision AESC Japan currently makes batteries for Nissan's flagship electric vehicle Leaf. The batteries are made at its factory in Kanagawa Prefecture near Tokyo. The firm plans to begin operating the new plant in around 3 years. It will supply batteries to auto firms in and outside Japan. Auto manufacturers around the world are stepping up efforts to shift to electric and hybrid vehicles to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. About 400 people joined a somber service in Tokyo on Saturday. They gathered to remember a Sri Lankan woman who died in detention at an immigration facility in March. People laid flowers and quietly prayed at a temple while priests chanted. 33-year-old Wishma Sandamali had complained of poor health while in detention in central Japan in mid-January. She was examined by doctors but wasn't hospitalized. Wishma's family has urged Japan's justice minister to explain the circumstances around her death. The immigration agency has refused to release footage of Wishma in detention.
I still can't believe that my sister died under such terrible circumstances in a country that she loved so much.
Wishma's sister says she needs to answer their mother's questions about the death. She called for help in uncovering the truth. The United States is preparing to slap sanctions on Belarus. That's after the forced landing of an airliner and subsequent arrest of a dissident journalist who was on board. International criticism has been mounting since journalist Roman Protasevich was detained last Sunday. In a statement, White House spokesperson Jen Psaki says Washington will impose sanctions against 9 state-owned enterprises next Thursday. The U.S. is also looking to target key members of President Alexander Lukashenko's government. It accuses them of supporting corruption, the abuse of human rights, and attacks on democracy. The statement calls on Lukashenko to allow a credible international investigation into the forced plane landing. It also urges the immediate release of all political prisoners and dialogue with opposition leaders. Meanwhile, Lukashenko met his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin on Friday to ask for his support over the incident.
There are always people who wish ill on us. You know them too. We have a relationship of trust, so I've brought some documents that will help you better understand the situation.
Putin expressed his understanding for Lukashenko's situation and called the international reaction over the top. He also pointed to the comparative silence following a 2013 incident when a plane carrying the Bolivian president was forced to land in Austria. There were reports at the time that U.S. intelligence whistleblower Edward Snowden may have been on board. Microsoft says Russian-linked hackers have launched a fresh wave of attacks in at least 24 countries, including the United States. The IT giant says over 150 organizations have been hit, including government agencies and think tanks. The hackers targeted approximately 3,000 email accounts with messages designed to trick people into downloading malicious files. Microsoft blames a group known as Nobelium, which was also thought to be behind attacks on the U.S. State Department last year. Microsoft is urging people to be cautious when clicking on links in emails. Germany has apologized for the killing of tens of thousands of people in colonial-era Namibia over a century ago. It has officially recognized the massacre as genocide for the first time.
In the light of Germany's historical and moral responsibility, we will ask Namibia and the descendants of the victims for forgiveness.
Soldiers killed some 75,000 people between 1904 and 1908 in reprisal for an uprising against German colonial rule. Germany has agreed to provide about $1.3 billion for reconstruction and development projects in the African nation. That's expected to support affected communities for over 30 years. But Moss says the payments can't be used as the legal basis for future compensation claims. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says half of the country's population has received at least one dose of a coronavirus vaccine. Data presented by the CDC shows that more than 166 million residents had received at least one shot as of Friday. More than 40% of the population has been fully inoculated. The number of new cases in the U.S. has declined as the vaccine rollout has progressed. The average daily count of new cases in the 7-day period through Thursday was around 20,000. That's down from an average of about 250,000 at the peak of infections. President Joe Biden has laid out a plan to inoculate 70% of residents aged 18 or older with at least one shot by July 4th. The government is now focusing its vaccination efforts on young people and those reluctant to get the shot. Those were the stories for this hour.
Hundreds of demonstrators have taken to the streets of the Polish capital, Warsaw, to show their support for the opposition movement in neighbouring Belarus. Belarusian opposition leader Svetlana Tikhanovskaya has called for worldwide protests. Sri Lankan officials say the country is facing its worst marine pollution crisis as tons of plastic waste from a burning container ship wash ashore. Thousands of military personnel have been deployed to help with the cleanup. The Congolese government says its report of a second volcanic eruption in the east of the country was a false alarm. It said the smoke detected by a plane flying over Mount Nyamuragira came from intense charcoal burning. And thousands of Manchester City and Chelsea fans have travelled to Portugal for an all-English Champions League final. Organisers have agreed that only 16,000 supporters will be allowed into the stadium.